Hey, good evening, guys. What I wanted to do tonight, kind of ran out of time today, so figured tonight in the house, in the fireplace, we'd talk about a simple bannock. And, bannock's kind of limited to the imagination in that there's so much you can do with it. There's a bunch of different styles of bannock. We've done quite a few in past videos. You can refer back to my tortas and beans video. I've done several other bannock videos to include a recipe by my buddy Mitch at Native Survival, his 2.0 recipe, which is more on the, it's almost like an oatmeal cookie that's very, very good. We've done that. So this past weekend, I was fortunate enough to be asked to tag along with Tim Smith from Jack Mountain Bushcraft School here in New Hampshire. He has a folk school here in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, and also a field school up in Marsardis, Maine. So I tagged along with him. I got to meet, and it was a privilege to do so, Paul Sveum, which is his senior instructor at the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School, and he taught a class on bannock. So I'm going to forego all the finite details of the class that he gave up there, and just kind of do a simple bannock recipe that he taught. And what I did was I filmed the whole thing up there. I've edited the video. I just got to pass it off to Tim so he can put it on his YouTube channel for those guys. So again, I'll save all the finite details of that, and would hope that you'd go to his channel and check that video out, because Paul's a very, very knowledgeable guy. Just a couple days hanging out with him, you just get that sense, by the way he talks, the way he carries himself, and things of that nature, that he's got a lot of knowledge. You can read up on him on the Jack Mountain Bushcraft site under instructors. There's a pretty good writing up of him, and describes all of his experience and things like that, his education and stuff like that. But again, I figured tonight we'll just go over the simple bannock. It's not really much different than things I've done in the past. There's like one different ingredient that I didn't really use. So I'm going to try it, see what we come up with. And I will say, he gave a little piece on what he was taught between the difference of cooking and baking. And the way he described that was, cooking is something you can do to where you can just experiment with things, and if you feel like X in your recipe that day, you can go ahead and add it. If you feel like Y and Z, then you can add that as well. And that's pretty much experimenting with cooking. When it comes to bacon, he described that as a science, where there's chemical reactions going on there to where you have to have certain measurements to make this stuff come out the right way, to keep it simple. So we're going to head over to the table. We're going to talk about the bannock mix, which is very, very simple. Again, I've gone over this in past videos, less one ingredient, but we'll take a look at that. We'll get it here on the fire, and we'll see what we come up with. So hang tight. So obviously I have a few things here. I got a couple different measuring devices here, and it's going to call for a full teaspoon of salt and a full teaspoon of baking powder in this simple bannock. And if you don't need so much salt, you can forego that altogether. You can kind of add that to taste and what's palatable to you. I have a measuring cup here, and that entails a cup of flour to a half a cup of water. And if you've been around a while and you've been seeing my videos, you'll know that I kind of mix things by eye, and add a little bit of water, add a little more if needed. If you go overboard, you can always add more flour and stuff like that. But again, the way Paul described this was, bacon's a science, so you kind of need exact ingredients, and he's experimented with this a lot to where he's come up with this recipe. So the best thing from what Paul described that you can use for your flour is just a plain white flour. It's the best. It's going to give you, you know, a gooey, chewy type pizza crust dough when you're done. There's, you know, a ton of different flours out there, but from his recommendation, this is the best one to use, so that's what we're going to go ahead and use. So I'm going to add that to the bowl right off the bat, and it's, like I said, it's a cup of that, and that doesn't quite fit in there, so we'll use a spoon. So a whole cup of flour, and this recipe is good for probably 2 people on the trail. If you're exerting a lot of energy and doing a lot of stuff like that, where you're, you know, blowing through calories, maybe it's for 1 person. But that's pretty much a cup there, so we'll add that to the mixing bowl. We'll go over to the kitchen in a second, add the half a cup of water, but we'll add our dry ingredients first. So we have our salt here, and we'll just add, I'm going to go with the whole teaspoon of salt because I'm a big fan of it. And we'll add that right into the dry mix. And now, like any other cooking technique, and I'm sure you know you guys are no stranger to this, but you always want to add your dry ingredients together and then your wet ingredients. And from what Paul recommended, he said to mix your baking powder, if that's what you're using. You could also use you know, yeast or baking soda, which are all leavening agents per se. So he recommended that you mix your leavening agent with water first and not directly to your dry mix. So we're going to add a teaspoon of baking powder, to our water. Now we'll go get a half a cup of water in there, so it's 1 cup of flour per half a cup of water, and then a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of baking powder. So we've added our half a cup of water with our baking powder, and we'll just give that a little mix. And then we'll add that to our dry mix. And stir that up. So as I was saying, you know, there's a bunch of different Bannock recipes. You can look on the internet and find them on YouTube, or, you know, just Google search it or something like that. And there's a ton of them. This particular recipe has been used for thousands of years. And as I mentioned, it's just a simple Bannock. It's a flatbread of sorts. And you can get as fancy as you want with that, and, you know, add things from the trail, or, you know, things that you have at home, just the same. So another one of Paul's recommendations was, when you're cooking bread, especially over a fire, that you want to spread that out as thin as you can get it. We're working with a small cast iron pan here, so I'm only going to get it so thin for it to fit in that. But the thinner you make it, the better it'll cook, and the more you can pay attention to it so you don't burn it. Burning your Bannock is one of the biggest ways to mess up your bread. So we're just going to pat it out. So the only ingredient different than things I've done in the past is the baking soda. You know, I just usually, unless it's Mitch's Bannock recipe, I just usually do, you know, a flour and a water mix, and it doesn't rise. I do that a lot with my tortas and beans, which is very good. So I've got that about as flat as I'm going to get it to fit in that type of pan. And then the only other thing that you do, we don't really want to fry this, which is what I typically do with my tortas. I'll fill the whole pan up and fry, you know, the dough. But as Paul put it, the fat from the oil just gives flavor to the bread, and we're not trying to fry it, we're just trying to add flavor. So that looks pretty good. Let's go get it on the fire. So like I said, we're not trying to really fry that with the oil, we're just adding flavor to the bread. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, keep shaking it around. There's a couple of different ways you can cook this. One side, and then kind of take it off the fire and angle it up, which is the way Paul did it at the class that he taught. And it's almost similar to a reflector oven at that stage, or cooking your bannock on a plank or something like that, that Mitch and I have done, you know, in other videos. But I think we're gonna cook this till we're good on one side. We're gonna flip it over, cook the other side, and see what happens there. You know, so like I said, bannock's been, or any type of bread, has been cooked for thousands of years. So, you know, it's an awesome contribution to be able to cook some type of bread out on the trail. It just, you know, adds to all the foods that you eat, and bread kind of complements any meal. So being able to do that is definitely a plus. Alright guys, so it's been sitting in the pan for a little bit, probably still hot. But from what I'm told, it's bad luck to cut bannock, so you kind of want to just tear it. And it's definitely hot. What do you want outside? Go lay down. Go lay down. Get. Real hot. I'll have to give that a second. But probably could have been a little thinner for my likings, but that's like a perfect bread. I mean, a little bendy, so it's going to be chewy, perfectly cooked. Man. Dunk that into some maple beans. Wow. That's really good. I can definitely taste the salt. So maybe next time I'll go a little light on that. Not that I mind it because it's delicious. But if I were to go with the beans that has salt in it, I could probably cut back on that. That's really good. Really hot. So we thank Paul Sveum from the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School for his recipe, kind of the way they do things up there in Maine. It's pretty good. So thanks for all your views, comments, and support as always. Until the next one, take care.